Welcome back, fellas, to another INXILE GTR lap guide. This week's daily race C is WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. The TT does look like the qualifying car at this stage. We are on medium tyres, brake balance rear 3. We have been able to run a 0.5 on rear 2, 3 and 4 and a 0.6 on rear 5, so not the world's most amount of difference there. For the race, the TT is not your friend unless you are one of the nicest guys on tyres. Try something like the Trophy or the Toyota 86, a little bit friendlier. There's going to be a lot of time with wide open throttle and just carrying heaps and heaps of speed in these long radius corners around here to maximize your time. So let's jump on board. Got the cones turned on, we remembered to do that. Braking threshold just as that 3 disappears under my dash there on the right hand side. As you can see, a little bit past the double cones, halfway between them and the 3 board. We are running over the white line before we turn in here. Don't know if that's critical to the lap time, but it feels good for me. A long part throttle here, really trying to wait for this exit to come to us. Nice little quick short shift up into third, switching back to the left hand side of the track, getting it turned in around where Gran Turismo reckons we should get it turned in. Little dab of the brake, plenty of part throttle there, and when you feel like you're not going to run into the sandpit on the edge, get some wide open throttle. Just a lift for the next right hander, turning in just after the cone, really trying to get as much throttle as we can after the apex here. We get a little bit eager and run off, probably half a tyre in the dirt there. Don't think it hurt us too much. So braking about halfway between the 3 board and the 2 board, miles past where Gran Turismo thinks we should be braking on this occasion. Some people are dropping 2 gears really fast. I'm not a fan of that. I drop into 4th, then pick up 3rd just as we come in. Just after the sausage, I think, is the apex. A few people apexing a little bit early and running deep and wide. Try the line that suits you. The next left-hander is the slightest dab of brakes and nothing at all, so the trail brake marker is going to last too long here. The car will turn on the compression there in the middle of the corner. As it's bouncing out of compression, make sure you have the throttle open, and then as soon as you feel you're not going to run into the dirt on the outside, it's wide open throttle. Braking a little bit after Gran Turismo's double cone marker this time, sort of trying to keep a straight line over the crest there. The right hand wheels are going to rub over that curb, probably halfway between that first cone and the brake marker. Just turning in just around where Gran Turismo reckons we should. Finish braking by the first apex, part throttle and wide open throttle on the compression at the bottom of the corkscrew. Trying to get back over to the right hand side now for some part throttle and really wide radius. Making this corner really open is your key to a decent lap time. Plenty of wide open on the edge. Another dab of the brakes just to get the nose down and turned in. Pick up some throttle before the apex and wide open throttle. Just keep squeezing it in there on the exit. Flicking back to the right hand side of the track now. We're going to brake just where the 3 marker slides under our dash again. Probably the rear bar in line with Gran Turismo's brake markers on this occasion, angling to the outside. This is probably my worst corner on the track. I was really struggling here, so maybe watch a few other videos and see how you go. See what other people recommend getting through there. It's definitely second, but what we do after that is a bit of a mystery to me at this point. So the fast mo lap now, really sliding this car, really trying to aim for the second apex is the most important one. We slid past the first one. Little quick tap of the brake, turn in, let the car come back to you, squeeze that throttle on the way out. Just a lift and turn in here, start squeezing that throttle down, really trying to get good exit speed. Halfway between the 3 and the 2, jab down a gear, pick up another gear, crack that throttle, start to push the car to the exit. Dab of the brake for the nose on the top of the crest and turn in. let the compression do most of the turning for you. Braking just as the dark patch on the road, staying in third for the corkscrew so we don't understeer. Back to the right hand side of the road. Gran Turismo's turn in is nice and handy there. The cone's not looking too bad around here, they're fairly handy. Apart from the brake ones, they seem to be a little bit out of whack. And we just take a whole chunk of sausage in there. You just want to run a bit of a wider radius there. You don't really want to touch that sausage, that affects your exit. Maybe lost a tenth or two to the line there. So on board for chase view now, braking just as where the roof and the 3 line, the white line, comes in parallel with the roof. You can see we're sort of sliding that down past the apex, cracking the throttle to keep the apex speed up. Really important to nail this second apex. You can shift up third earlier if you so desire there. Getting back to the left hand side of the road now, just a dab on the brake and turn in, not too heavy, we don't want to understeer. Cracking the throttle, just keep feeding that throttle in there, trying not to run off on the outside. This is just a lift and turn in. Start opening that throttle back up, and wide open just as we realise we're not going to have an excursion into the sand pit. Running the right hand side of the road now, braking about halfway between the 3 and the 2 miles after where Gran Turismo says we should be braking. As we were saying before, you can downshift too quickly if you like. I like a slower downshift. I feel like there's more control in the car. Apexing after the sausage on the left hand side. Wide open throttle is really early here on this run to the back straight. So it's just a dab to get a bit of weight on the nose, and we're going to do a lot of the turning in the compression in the middle of this corner with no inputs at all. Cracking the throttle on the compression and wide open throttle once you realise you're not going to play in the sandpit once again. Keeping the car to the left hand side of the road now. Braking a little bit after Gran Turismo's brake boards, pretty much right as when the car is completely in that dark patch on the road. Starting from as far right as we can, staying in third for the corkscrew, rolling down the hill now with some part throttle, wide open throttle on the compression, trying to get back over to the right hand side of the road. We want to turn in from as close as that cone as possible. We're creeping a little bit towards the apex. Part throttle is the key all the way down here. The higher that apex speed, the better your lap time. Darting back to the left hand side of the road now, a little bit of brush on the brake, turn in, try and get some part throttle and coast down to the apex. Wide open throttle, push the car to the exit. We're darting back to the right hand side of the road now, and just after the brake marker cones disappear, we're going to be right on the picks. And once again, this is probably the corner not to copy. We take a handful of sausage there, really unsettles the car on the exit. You just want to run another 20-30 centimeters wider than that and miss the sausage for the best run to the line. Full speed run now, braking at the 3 board. First apex is not critical, second apex is. Back to the left hand side, naturally let it flow back to the left. Little brush of the brake, some part throttle, wide open throttle, staying out of the sand. Just a lift turn in, part throttle, wide open throttle, pushing that car between the 3 and the 2, down 1, down another. Plenty of part throttle, probably 50% on the apex there, 100%. Dab on the brakes, coast, half throttle, wide open. Back to the left hand side of the road, trying to straighten up the braking section here. Staying in third just to carry a little bit of extra speed. Part throttle once we pass the first apex, wide open throttle on the compression. Trying not to come under half throttle here if you're lucky. We dip down to about quarter. Just cracking the throttle, letting the car coast through that apex just before the 3 board. Trying to stay off this sausage. We didn't manage at that lap. And a run to the line, down into bumper view. in case you haven't had enough of my voice just yet. So at the 3 board, so it looks like 3's halfway through the screen in this view. We are going to straddle that white line, staying to the left. Long trail braking section, trying to get the rear to rotate, then cracking throttle as fast as possible. Second apex is the important apex here. Squeezing on that throttle. You can upshift a little earlier if you find you're going to run off, to get the grip back. Gently flowing back to the left hand side of the road. A dab on the brakes as we turn in. Crack that throttle as the sausage comes past us. Wide open throttle just as we realise we're not in the sand pit. Lifting and trying to maintain. I'm trying really hard not to close the throttle through here. The more throttle you can carry does minimize the line that you can take, but you are trying not to close the throttle. Let the car come back to the right hand side of the road now, halfway between the 3 and the 2. Got our brake cones in the rear vision mirror, you can see there. Going to drop 1 gear, drop the 2nd gear on the way to the apex. Apex is just after that red sausage, if you ask me. Wide open throttle's really early for this run along the back straight, or a bit of a back straight. Just a dab on the brakes up here on the crest, just to keep the nose down, and then a coast half throttle on the compression. Wide open throttle as we realise we've got enough room and we're not going to play in the sand pit. Let the car come back across to the left hand side of the road, trying to straighten up our braking, halfway between the 2 cones on the right hand side there, probably between the 4 and the 3 board, only dropping down into 3rd, so make sure you do decelerate enough but stay in 3rd. Finish your braking on the first apex, pick up part throttle, and we're going to go wide open throttle on the compression on the bottom of the corkscrew, trying to get back to the right hand side of the road so we can open up this long left hander, really long, trying to keep as much throttle in there as we can. Keep the car rolling. When you realise you're not going to run off the right hand side, let the car come back to the left hand side, dab on the brake, get the nose down, crack the throttle before the apex, slide into the apex, wide open throttle on the exit. Now we're going to let the car drift back to the right hand side of the road, around the 3 board, right there in the middle of your screen. Full deceleration all the way to the 1 board, and then we're going to try and just skirt to the left hand side of this sausage. We managed to take a little bit there. Ideally you don't want to touch it at all, and the run to the line to see how well you did. So on board for fast mo, things we're thinking about now: 3 board, the cones do look like they're reasonable around here. 2nd apex is the critical one. Let the car move back to the left hand side of the road, dab on the brakes, part throttle shortly before the apex. We want to be rolling past these apexes with some throttle. Just a lift off turn in here. Do your best not to close the throttle. Carry that exit speed. Just down 2 gears into here as we turn left. Apex after the sausage. Wide open throttle fairly early. Dab of brakes on the top of the crest. Turn in, part throttle on compression, wide open throttle shortly thereafter. Back to the left hand side of the road now, straighten up the braking zone. A little bit after the braking markers, stay in 3rd, part throttle after the first apex, wide open throttle on the compression. Get back to the right hand side of the road, really open this up as best you can. Back to the left hand side now, opening up this last right hander. Back to the right hand side of the road for this left hand U-turn, turning in pretty much where Gran Turismo reckons we should be turning in, trying to miss that sausage, and a run to the line. So much to talk about. Thanks for tuning in, fellas. Simcator's podcast should be starting shortly. If I was able to help, give us the old like and subscribe. Otherwise, I will catch you next week. Cheers, fellas.